And turning now to New York, and the three candidates taking the stage at an NBC studio to convince New Yorkers that they should be their next mayor. It's the first of two debates scheduled before voters are set to hit the polls in just a few weeks. The Democratic nominee, Zohran Mamdani, currently holds a double-digit lead in the race against former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and Republican Curtis Sliwa. Let's bring in Sam Brock, who has been following the debate from the streets of Manhattan all the way into that studio. Sam, can we get just a quick vibe check? Last time these two candidates shared a stage, there were a whole lot more people on it, and even then it got pretty spicy. Are we seeing any fireworks tonight?
Still spicy, Gotti. There's no question about that. Look, Curtis Sliwa, actually, of the three candidates, was in the middle. So you had Cuomo on one side, Mamdani on the other. They were separated by that proximity or distance, but they definitely managed to find one another. As far as the topics that really popped up right away, I thought it was interesting. The candidates were asked, if you had to pick the headlines for a year from now, assuming that you won the mayor's race, what would they say? And, you know, Cuomo said rent down, crime down, education scores up, more jobs in New York City. Really a nod to the fact that both public safety and affordability are some of the main themes of this campaign. Mamdani invoked Trump and said Mamdani continues to take on Trump, delivers on affordability issues to New Yorkers. It was suggestive of the fact this is, yes, it's a local race. It's a New York City race, Gotti, but it's also one with massive national implications. Trump was mentioned 3 or 4 times really within the first several minutes, and what level of resistance the next mayor would put up to an administration that so far has demonstrated it's willing to deploy National Guardsmen and troops to cities around the country, particularly cities that are run by Democrats. So that was very topical as well. The first real question in terms of something that would put one of the candidates on the defensive was to former Governor Cuomo and about his scandals, right, involving sexual harassment allegations, about the nursing home numbers that he was alleged to have manipulated, and mandates to nursing homes to take COVID-positive patients in the middle of the pandemic. He sort of brushed both of those off as political. With respect to the allegations of sexual harassment, said, yes, there was a state attorney general's report that showed that he had committed harassment, but he said that 5 DAs looked into it and found no criminal behavior. So that's sort of how he tried to reassure voters on that. With respect to what happened during the reporting of deaths at nursing homes, he said, yes, he did face congressional testimony. There is an ongoing investigation from the DOJ that's open right now, but he said that too is political. Sort of moving the pendulum to Mamdani, the question with him was experience. This is someone who no one knew, Gotti, a year ago. He has spent 5 years now, not even, in the New York State Assembly. Before that, he was representing low-income New Yorkers who were facing potential foreclosure. And so how are you going to handle a job of this magnitude, $116 billion budget, without the sort of executive and political experience that certainly Cuomo has? And it really illuminated a very interesting exchange between the two of them. Take a listen.
This is not a job for someone who has no management experience to run 300,000 people, no financial experience to run $115 billion budget. He literally has never had a job. On his resume, it says he interned for his mother. This is not a job for a first-timer. Any day, you could have a hurricane, you have, God forbid, a 9/11, a health pandemic. If you don't know what you're doing, people could die.
Mr. Mamdani, want to respond?
And if we have a health pandemic, then why would New Yorkers turn back to the governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes? That's the kind of experience that's on offer here today. What I don't have an experience, I make up for in integrity.
The experience is definitely something that is going to be returned to. I will add, Gotti, that in the Quinnipiac poll that was conducted, one of the most recent polls since Eric Adams dropped out of the race, one of the questions was on ethics. And regardless of who you're supporting as a voter, who do you think is the more ethical candidate? And Mamdani polled much higher than Cuomo in that category. We'll see if that ends up being a main theme in this race, too.
Yeah, fascinating race. Sam Brock, thank you.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.